From Shine Cancer Support, this is
Not Your Grandma's Cancer Show.
Hi, I'm Tatum Druck, and today we are diving back in to cancer scams. We did this episode, part one, about a year ago, but there's been so much more in the cancer scam world out there. And although we know that this is really horrible, obviously it's not a nice thing to be scammed, we are taking a bit of a light-hearted look at it today. We are laughing at the scammers. But if you have fallen into some deep dives, at some point maybe been sucked into a tide of, maybe I found the answer, we're going to be exploring why that is and what they are doing, what are their methods.
This is Not Your Grandma's Cancer Show. Not Your Grandma's Cancer Show.
Two of the best people are here with me today. I've got Claire and Kynwyn, who both work at Shine Cancer Support, that have been on the podcast many times. Claire, welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
We're going to do things a little bit differently today. We're going to dive in with Claire giving us a bit of a scoop on some cancer technology that maybe we haven't heard about before.
There's a reason you haven't heard about it before, because it's not advisable. But yeah, essentially I've been looking at various pieces of, so-called wonder technology that make claims to either help cure or diagnose cancer. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting / depressing to know that this stuff has been around for such a long time. Like hundreds of years, people have been making machines that cure stuff, and like with the quack doctors of hundreds through history, this stuff has been around for a while. So I thought I'd focus in on just one machine and sort of unpick it a bit and the story of that particular machine. This is called the Rife machine.
Ooh.
Have you guys heard of this before?
I haven't. It sounds amazing.
I mean, already we're sold,
already
right?
I'm in.
Sign me up. Sign me up. So the Rife machine was originally developed in the 1920s by an American scientist. I'm putting inverted commas around his name. His name was Royal Raymond Rife, which, I mean, what a name. Royal Raymond Rife. And his machine was building on the work of another doctor called Dr. Abrams, who believed that every disease had its own electromagnetic frequency. So he suggested basically that doctors could kill disease or cancerous cells. So this isn't just the cancer cure, it's promises to cure. I mean, it said it would cure AIDS, Lyme disease. I love when it's quite like random, the diseases that they think it will work for, by sending electrical impulses that are identical to the cell's unique frequency that they've identified with these machines. The theory is sometimes called radionics. I hadn't heard of this before, but radionics effectively involves detecting those vibrations and energies from healthy and diseased tissues.
So is this machine basically a vibration machine?
Effectively, it's like the electromagnetic, they're like radio waves basically.
Okay.
And the idea is that you're meeting the energy of the diseased cell with an equal magnetic frequency. And the idea is basically that, try not to laugh, the idea is that when the cells meet their equal frequency, they kind of like explode or like implode on themselves. It destroys the cells. So this Rife frequency generator was the machine that Rife developed in the 30s. And he believed that basically sending these signals in would cause it's the cancer causing microbes rather than the cancer cells themselves. It's the bacteria and microbes that he believed caused cancer that were in the tumors that he believed would shatter and die if he shot them with this frequency generator.
So this was 1920s.
1920s, 1930s.
And people are going in, and what's happening? Is there mass implosions of microbacteria?
No, there was very little evidence. It's interesting actually, because as with all these things, you read some sites and it's like, he did some research and there were some results, and most other sites say this was rubbish, there's no evidence to prove that any of this helped at all. But even apparently at the time, it wasn't like this huge surge of people believing these claims. He was still quite like out there even in his time when he was trying to develop this machine. And there are legitimately no studies that have proved any of the findings.
Do you know how they targeted the cells? Like, how were the waves getting to the right place? Do we know this, or is it a bit unclear?
It's a little bit unclear. I mean, interestingly, the Rife machines didn't end there, right? So in the 80s, another person whose name I won't say, but he was an author. So again, a writer, and I think he might have been an engineer, reignited interest in these machines. And so it's not like this is something from history. This is something that continues on now, and they exist. And the claims in the 80s were very much along the lines of, this is the secret cure that's been covered up by the government. This is, of course, it's Big Pharma. The American government has hidden this machine because obviously they're making tons of money from cancer, and they don't want anyone to find the cheap, easy, quick cure. I mean, I don't know about this guy in the 80s who reignited it. It doesn't appear that he has any background in medicine or
oncology.
The machines that are around now tend to have like a sort of a pulse thing that you put on your skin. You can direct it locally or generally. There are sort of riffs on this idea as well. There are these, what they call high frequency, I'm going to forget the word, high frequency resonators, something that you can, you hold on to two handles, and that just does your whole body magically. It just soaks up all the resonant energy, and it's matching it all and curing. That's being sold as a cure for a lot of things.
And when you say being sold, like, how much would something like that cost?
Yeah. So interestingly, I went on a proper deep dive. I decided I would see if I could sign up and buy a Rife machine. I mean, obviously, I wasn't actually going to go there, but I took it one step further and I looked at the websites that are selling these Rife machines. There's a website called Spooky2. I'm just going to leave that out there. No comment. It sounds like a legit medical website, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It's something to do with, Einstein had this theory about when two cells were resonating in different places but in the same way, and he called it the spooky something phenomenon. They've coined onto this, and so the website's called Spooky2. And they sell these machines, and they're really expensive, and they sell for thousands of dollars. Basically, I signed up to their live chat, and I was like, I decided to, because I was interested as to how they would sell it. Were they going to say to me that, yes, this will cure cancer? Or are they going to kind of cover their backs a bit? Because there have been cases that have been bought. There have been really sad stories where practitioners, as they call themselves with these machines, will offer this cure to someone who is in a desperate situation, and it's just awful. And they decide to follow that treatment. Again, everything's in inverted commas, but that treatment path of this machine, and people have died because obviously it doesn't work. And so, I had this idea that more current websites might be cautious because there've been legal suits and cases, and I thought they might want to defend themselves against the potential of telling people that this will cure cancer. So I thought I'd go put it to the test. So I signed up and spoke to someone called Lisa in our little online chat, and my opening question was, will this Rife machine cure my cancer? I thought I'm just going to go in there.
Strong.
To the point. Straight to the point, strong opener. Lisa told me that it helps. And I was like, okay, cool. Okay, so you're couching it slightly.
Yeah.
And I just said, how does it work? And she sent me a long video to watch about how it works. And essentially, the idea is that it explodes the bacteria and microbes. That's what I said before about the viruses and bacteria and cancer. It'll make those cells shatter. So I said, oh, interesting. Has it been shown to work on cancer cells? Unfortunately, Lisa said, I'm sorry, I haven't got a video about that.
Lisa, come on.
I was like, come on, sort me out, Lisa. I said, okay, but you say that it helps. And she said, let me tell you more details about how it helps. And then sent slightly more generic information about generally what it does in the body. So you can kind of see they're holding back from saying this definitely cures. But I thought, I'm not going to leave it there. I'm going to give her enough time to really, and so I said, so the way it shatters germs and pathogens to pieces, which is like a quote from their site, it might do the same to the cancer cells. And she said, yes, you are completely right. I was like, okay. So she stepped up the ante. And I said, do you have people who have cured their cancer this way?
Yeah.
And she said, yes, let me show you some feedback and some stories. She sent me information about people who had allegedly cured their cancer with this machine. So I said, well, that's really encouraging. And I thought, I thought I'd really hit her. I was like, do you think this is better than chemotherapy? And she said, people have different views on that, actually. And I was like, okay. So she wasn't going to be drawn and say, you should stop treatment and start this machine. But she did effectively say to me that, yes, this can cure your cancer cells. These are the stories of people who it's worked for.
And we know
stories are so
powerful. Yeah, I think me and Kynwyn were going to say the exact same thing just then. Kynwyn, come on in.
No, I was just going to say we know how powerful stories are, right? You know that hearing of somebody else who has cured their cancer with a Rife machine, you know, you're going to want to go all in. It's like it's classic sort of marketing 101.
Yeah, particularly when you're faced with, you know, medical sort of prognoses that might be unclear. You know,
exactly.
Obviously doctors have to be, we can't guarantee this will work, and that's a really tough reality to accept. And so if you get something that just says, yes, this has worked and this does it and this is what you need and this is the answer everyone's covering up, then it's certainty, isn't it? It's a more comfortable place to be.
Did Lisa have a price for you?
Well, yes. So I did say, I don't know what to choose now. Which machine should I be getting? Yeah. So she tried to sell me the most powerful kit straight away. Okay. And it was about $6,000, this kit that she was trying to sell.
Wow. And they do delivery to the UK?
I don't know, actually. I didn't get that far. I felt at some point I'm going to have to back off because otherwise I'm actually going to find I've bought a machine. But I said, that's more money than I've got. Will this be as good as, what other options are there, and will they be as good at? And she said, well, you could try this one for £4,000. And I said, but is that going to be as good at killing the cancer cells? And she said, yes, it is. It's got 4 modes of treatment. And when it becomes very specific, you've got 4 modes of treatment. And I mean, they started to sound like I just didn't understand what she was talking about after a while. She started talking about the straight plasma tube is good for a full body treatment, and the Phaneton tube is perfect for local targeted. Like, there's lots of detail, which again is like words you don't know that sound vaguely weirdly sciencey but aren't.
Phanotube.
Phanetron tube. Yeah.
What is that? What do they have in Back to the Future? The movie Back to is it the flux capacitor? Yeah. I feel like they've made this up.
That's what it felt like. So I said, I ended up leaving Lisa with, I was in 2 minds about whether to give Lisa a piece of my mind or not. And I decided maybe my rage wasn't best placed at this person on the end of this thing. But it was just, I found it really shocking that actually, there have been cases as recently as like 2019 where people flogging this treatment with machines like this have led to people. And, there was a really sad case. A guy who was in his 30s. With pancreatic cancer, and he decided to go down this route, and he could have potentially lived 18 months to 2 years with conventional treatment, and this, he died really quickly. And you think there are just some real tragic stories. And how is this allowed? How is this stuff so easy to find on the internet? And I could have easily bought something straight away there and then.
How big are the machines? Like, do you need to clear out a room, or is it quite compact?
No, it looks on the. It's a bit hard to get scale, but they look about printer size.
Printer, okay. So
like a little, with lots of wires and cables and leads and official cancer curing stuff. Yeah. Sorry, I too am shocked at how easy it is to get. I'm just really caught up in the sort of the dynamics of the whole thing. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Are you going to feel like you're getting your money's worth if you spend $6,000 on something that's the size of a printer?
There are a number of different machines. I mean, I think Rife is one of them, and they usually all have like quite an interesting backstory. And, you know, we knew this technology back in the day and it's been lost to the sands of time or squished or forgotten about in the Second World War or whatever it is. There's always like a good yarn behind it. But some of them, I remember telling Clara about this one machine, and she Googled it and she goes, no, it's legit. And I was like, no, it isn't. But actually, the first sites that come up make it look completely legit. And some of it is that legitimate sites have to reference it in order to say, actually, it doesn't have the evidence. But if you have it completely separate, then people feel like, oh, you're just not giving me all the answers. You're just not giving me all the options. So there's this real sense of like, well, actually, should you be bringing it in? You know, should Cancer Research UK be talking about these machines? If they're, even if it's to say there's very little behind it, because when you search for it, it does make it look really legitimate.
And actually, the Rife machine is referenced. Cancer Research UK has talked about it. The tricky thing is, in and of itself, it doesn't pose any major health risks. So you can't say this is a dangerous machine, because they said there have been accounts of electric shocks and some rashes. You know, like, but that makes you feel like they're talking about potential side effects of a legitimate device. They obviously say there is no evidence to support this, but like you say, if it's on Cancer Research UK website, it kind of makes you think like, oh, this is an option. They just haven't got the evidence yet, or you could interpret that from it, couldn't you? Yeah.
Kanya, and you're kind of looking a little pensive. I mean, would you fancy a Rife machine?
I think the thing I was thinking was, obviously in the UK, we're really lucky that cancer treatment is paid for, right? You can get it free on the NHS. Obviously, you have a lot of other expenses around it, but it's free. But I suppose if you live in a place like the US, depending on your health insurance, where you're looking at paying thousands of dollars out, maybe paying $6,000 for a Rife machine doesn't seem so bad, right? Like, if that's going to cure you, you can also see why people go down that route if they're faced with ruinous bills. So, and these are, I suppose, are sold globally on the internet. So, you can totally imagine how people would think, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to have to pay tens of thousands of dollars anyway. Why don't I give this a go too, right? Yeah. And it's really sad.
Yeah, it's kind of that, maybe it's just worth a punt, right? Like, cover bases. And I did a deep dive that started on TikTok and then took me all over the internet. And I started on TikTok because 60% of people under 30 are getting all their health information from TikTok. So it has become the place to go for health information. There's multiple of people selling all kinds of lotions and potions out there. But there's one particular woman who's from Australia who was banned in Australia. Like, she was told, no, you got to stop it. You don't have any foundation. You're talking outside of your field. She's not an expert. She's talking about babies. She's talking about, cancer, impotence, eye drops. She's just out of her thing. And so Australia, several territories are like ban, ban, ban. And she has now exploded on TikTok. But not only is it sort of her and her content, but TikTok has gone running and AI is now making new videos that have nothing to do with her. She's not organizing this. So like bots and content creators are using her. And did you know now she actually has the secret of how to live to 100 years old, but she's been arrested this is major air quotes. There's video of her being arrested, which is made up,
Oh, wait, she hasn't been arrested.
No.
No, I thought she was going to be struggling to live because she's going to be 100 years old and she'll be in prison.
No, so she's not really arrested, but there is now footage online because she has this secret to how to live to 100, how to cure cancer. And all these websites that have some really bad AI video of her are selling a number of different products, which led me to different websites looking through those products. And one of them, when you think of snake oil salesmen, right? So you think of 1850s, the Wild West, the guy coming into town on the horse and the wagon and this, this tonic that will cure all. One of the things actually had that font and that style.
The Wild West font.
Yes, it was.
Nice.
It was like original snake oil. And again, it is then linking to other people, and you start to follow them, and then you find this guy who cured his cancer through his protocol. His protocol has been followed and copied. And this is where you start going down rabbit holes, right? And it took me forever to find out if this guy was still alive. Because sometimes what happens, and as we know right now with the videos of, snake oil lady number one, the banned Australian woman, being, fake arrested online, someone could keep going with the story, keep going with videos long after someone's even around now. So I ended up finding out about this guy's protocol and discovered it isn't a rare, small, tiny thing. It is actually being taken quite widely, being sold quite widely, with South Korea basically having a run on this, and it is dog deworming medication.
Wow.
I have heard of this.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I have not, but I've got some in the kitchen, so I'm good to go, right?
I mean, they say that with, some herbs, and It is something that's already been given to animals. So some people are like, okay, well, we know its efficacy because it's been around a long time. We know what it does. They're starting to do studies on it now. South Korea, they didn't have any more left because people were like, yes, okay, this is the answer. And, there are these people with their protocols and they're still alive. Like this is incredible. And so all these websites are now selling that along with, the snake oil Wild West products and the herbs and everything else. And I'd read just enough that I was like, oh, well, maybe there is something to it.
Yeah, it sounds convincing.
I could feel myself being drawn in and kind of going, well, is that maybe? It's possible.
And
right?
so, Tatum, just to clarify, so people are taking the deworming to cure their cancer or to live to 100, or I guess both? You cure your cancer and then you live to 100.
I think that's, the living to 100 is the secret to life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yes. And like you were saying, Claire, I think one of the ways to spot, if something's really legit is it curing everything? Right? As opposed to, it's nothing about a specific kind of cancer. It's just cancer, which we know is millions of different diseases, right? So, and it's cancer and everything. So, it's usually got a great backstory, maybe something akin to a study, or a study was defunded and it's all very mysterious because no one wants, a medication that you have in your kitchen to be the thing and it's going to bring down the pharmaceutical industry. I did look into it, and the people that I found both in the US and here that used it, I feel like I should have a drum roll. What do we think? What do we think? They did regular treatment. Yeah, they did regular treatment and then did their protocol.
I see.
But
it's the deworming protocol that saves them, not the chemotherapy, surgery, or radiotherapy.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the reason that it's been skewed in the way that it has is because they said that the doctors said it was very unlikely that, or it wasn't going to shrink at all. So the doctors said, we think you don't have very long. This is just, to cover your bases just in case. And you've got a 0.05% chance of making it through. And then they've had like an amazing turnaround. And they've put that down to the deworming medication and other herbs, and not down to the tried and tested treatment. And I can see, again, I could feel myself being drawn in, someone going, well, I mean, that does sound like the treatment wasn't going to work, and he was given really bad news and this looks much better. And however, the thing about working with Shine is that we've all met multiple people who did have amazing turnarounds in their treatment that no one expected. And when you don't know that that's a possibility, that sometimes there are outliers, then it does look like it's the specific addition that someone's doing, and not that actually a remission in this situation is not completely unheard of. Doesn't mean it's gone forever, just it might have delayed it for now. And
the other thing that I noticed, or I learned on my deep dive, which I'll talk about later, is that in those kinds of studies where people say, well, I was told I was going to die and I did all the treatment and then I did the worming tablets and that's what saved me, they rarely ask the doctors if that's what the doctor said. So do you know what I mean? It's when you go into the research, when you actually start to research it, like case histories, very few have the actual complete medical notes from the original doctor who says, yes, I told this person they had a 0.5% chance of living, but now they're alive. It's a miracle. It kind of comes up in retrospect from a patient or someone who knew somebody, right? It's really hard to pin down, were you actually told that?
And it's that language, like, this really random, specific, doctors generally, when it comes to things like that, a little bit more vague, and actually I've never heard a doctor say the word remission. With certain types of cancer, it's used more often, but with other types, it's just not even something that's talked about in that way. Like you have a, 12% chance of remission with this. And so it's just, like those looking beyond. How many people have that time, that energy, that understanding of reading between the lines and deep diving and actually finding the treatment that those people really did do?
And that's always a good thing to do, actually. So usually when I see somebody who claims to have cured their cancer with whatever it is, it's like a hobby, really. go and see, well, what other treatment have they had? And almost without fail, they have all had, at the very least, surgery. radiotherapy and chemotherapy, but definitely they've had surgery to remove the cancer. And then, they were supposed to get chemotherapy and they turned down chemotherapy and then cut milk out of their diet. So it was cutting the milk out of their diet that saved them, not the surgery. And that's always a good thing to do because it's usually a lie. It's never as cut and dry as people say it is.
No. And I think they do play on something as well that is in us, that when you are scared and you're anxious and you want certainty, you feel like being cynical or skeptical could feel like a failing, as in you don't want to be closed-minded. Like, oh, what if I was closed-minded to that thing and then that was the thing that would have helped? And so the idea of wanting to feel like you're open to all options is really enticing. And actually it might be a failure on my part if I was judgmental or closed-minded about something that could have helped.
Absolutely. And think of all the things that have happened in our lifetimes. Previous generations didn't have this many antidepressants, even with weight loss medication. Yes, there were ones that came out and then they were retracted, and I remember someone saying, oh, never believe anything that says you're going to lose weight, but it's always a scam. And actually, now there are advances, there are things that, weren't around 40 years ago. And we've all seen in our lifetimes radical change. So just on that, Claire, you don't want to be like, well, I'm sure that's impossible. I mean, because actually we're living in a time where there is lots of possibility.
Absolutely. And they'll tease you with bits of research that often you're like, where are these researchers and where are they doing this? But the idea of kind of, even with that machine, the Rife machine, there was this bit that I read where it was like, but researchers recently have been experimenting with radio frequencies to see how they affect cells in the body. And actually it's realized that they can impact tumor cells and not other cells. But research is in the early stages and there haven't been any human studies. And these studies are also using different frequencies than the Rife machine frequencies would have done. But even just hearing that makes you go, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't write all this off as, even though all of the evidence that's out there says there is no evidence that this works. The fact that they're researching into something vaguely like it hooks you in again, doesn't it? And you think, that's why I need to stay open-minded.
There's also a massive irony, I always think, in that people are telling you, Big Pharma wants your money. That's why they're covering this up. But if you pay $6,000 for a Rife machine, you really stick it to the man. Someone's making money, right? It's you're losing your money either way.
I read a fascinating article on Yahoo News, which is not normally where I go to get my news, but it was telling me about Mexico and where to get really great cancer treatment in Mexico, and in specific, immunotherapy. Immunotherapy is something that we know a lot of people have done, but this place wasn't doing immunotherapy like we know. It's doing lots of other really out there, quote unquote, immune building things. So they've taken the language of legitimate cancer protocols that are being developed, that are working, taken that word, and I now have this clinic where they're, supplying very medical sounding things. And the article, it's in full support. And I went looking and nowhere could I see sponsored content. And it read much more like an article. So again, if you were looking, you're like, oh, well, this looks legit, they're using the same language and, and it's all sounding really good. And Mexico's a, nice sunny place to visit. That I could see why that would be so exciting. And Kynwyn, I know that you have something, again, headquartered, or not headquartered in Mexico, but in...
No. I think
that's their center.
Yes. So I think it's headquartered in the US now, but obviously it has outposts in Mexico and Hungary, because I suppose they must have different regulations about medical treatment there. So this is, I looked at the Gerson therapy, which a lot of people might have come across, because it's one of those things people mention to you when you do have cancer, like, have you looked at Gerson therapy? It's got a great backstory as well. So I feel like, a bit like Claire was talking about, machines and, a long time ago, Gerson therapy was created by Max Gerson, who in the 1920s and 1930s lived in West Germany. So obviously then escaped the Nazis, as all good sort of, if you want to have a good story, escape the Nazis. I have to say that I haven't found anything that says how or why he escaped the Nazis. He seems to have grown up in Germany and then ended up in the US. Whether he actually had to escape the Nazis or not, I don't know, but it sounds great. So anyway, poor Max in the 1920s had debilitating migraines. I got migraines, really terrible. So he started experimenting with this therapy, which was a lot of plant-based juicing. Then he introduced some other supplements, including a calf liver supplement. So you would take that, or you would get it injected. My favorite part, which is coffee enemas, regular coffee enemas, and apparently worked great for his migraines. So then he also, for some reason, started using it on people with tuberculosis. And it cured, like, I think the early numbers that I saw were, 458 out of 460 people with TB were cured. So, like,
that's incredible.
Right? That's incredible.
Because also, if it had been 500, that would be unbelievable, right?
Yeah, right. Those poor two people who really missed out.
Yeah.
So in 1958, he published a book called A Cancer Therapy, Results of 50 Cases. He died in 1959, and I went down a rabbit hole trying to figure out what he died of, because I thought, did he die of cancer? Why didn't the Gerson therapy help him? He actually died of pneumonia. So I guess the lesson is, if you do have pneumonia, you really want to stay away from this, because it's not going to help you. Today, this is actually like massive business. If you want to go to there are a couple of clinics, like I said, one in Hungary, one in Mexico. It's about $6,000 a week. That doesn't include transport to and from the airport, which I thought seemed like, if I'm going to pay $6,000 to come to your clinic, the least you could do is pick me up at the airport. Anyway, if you need a friend to come with you, that's another few $1,000s as well. And basically, you can go for like 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, 21 days, however many days you feel you need. And you get a series of coffee enemas, a plant-based organic diet, and at least 13 times a day, you get juices, one of 3 different types of juices, which are carrot and apple, or the Gerson green juice. I'm imagining that's some kind of like ancient secret from pre-Nazi Germany. Now the juices also, you can't just have any juice. You have to have what they call a masticating juice. So this can only be made by a special juicer, which costs thousands of dollars as well. So, like, you're not just in for a penny, you are in for many pounds here. This is thousands of dollars. You also have to take a lot of supplements, potassium compounds, something called Lugol solution, thyroid hormone, pancreatic enzymes, niacin, and they have, you don't have to take the calf liver supplement anymore because bacterial infections were being given to people. So they've cut that out. I do have to say, so I was looking on their website, and they have a list of, it's called the Diagnosis Directory. And you can look up a variety of cancer types, and it will tell you, how good this therapy is. And for most of them, it will say things like, this is a condition for which few successful recoveries using the Gerson therapy have been reported.
Oh.
Yeah. So they do sort of own up to quite a few. Like, if you've got testicular cancer, thyroid cancer, you've had a stem cell transplant. Let's see, what else? I think lymphoma, which is what I had. This is a condition for which many successful recoveries using Gerson therapy have been reported with generally fast tumor reduction observed. There are, of course, no randomized control trials of this. There is no information anywhere in any medical journal which says that this therapy works, I should say. You can also look up all sorts of things like CFS, chemical sensitivity, and fibromyalgia. It lists just a whole load of things that it might help you with. But if you go down the route of saying, I asked Google, could you find me successful cases of people cured with Gerson therapy? They're all very anecdotal. There's no good evidence that this works. And I guess a bit like Claire said, people have died. And one of the most famous cases was somebody named Jessica Ainscroft, who was an Australian. She became a wellness blogger. She was diagnosed with a type of sarcoma of her arm and was told that she should have her arm amputated. And so she decided, instead of having her arm amputated, I think she did do chemotherapy, worked for a little bit, and then she went on Gerson therapy. While she was on that, her mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her mother took up Gerson therapy and died. And then Jessica kept going with the Gerson therapy and she died. So, part of me, you want to laugh at this stuff because some of it is just so ridiculous. No one needs any coffee enemas, full stop, but you certainly don't need multiple coffee enemas a day. But, the point is this actually kills people and people pay thousands of dollars for it. I did also just want to say that I looked up some practitioners of Gerson therapy and I found one in the UK. So he is, you can pay hundreds of pounds for consultations with him. And I thought, I wonder what kind of education he has, because obviously he's done some Gerson certificates. His main qualifications appear to be a master's degree in economics in 1991, and then a master's degree in theology in 2015.
Oh, handy.
And then, and then he actually brought them together and wrote about Christ in Chinese medicine in a book. So I don't know, if I'm dying of cancer, I don't need an economist to treat me.
But a theologian, I mean.
Yeah, what I want is a medical doctor who knows some real medical science stuff to help me and won't make me spend £2,000 on a juicer. Yeah. So that's Gerson therapy. It's a massive scam.
Yeah, but it has some really big supporters.
It really does.
Our current king has in the past mentioned that. Yeah. I mean, it was like 20 years ago, but he thought that the NHS should be looking more to this kind of thing going forward. I've been on websites in the UK where it's a perfect blend of quite useful information, really relevant, and things that we think about already or we've experienced, like, the NHS is incredible at, sort of fixing something with surgery, but maybe not in terms of thinking holistically about that person and what they need. And that's so true. They've mixed some really, handy things with also having Gerson therapy as one of the resources on their website, where the only, be careful is if you're already underweight, you might lose some more weight. Not that actually, there's no science for this. And it's been around so long that
he had to flee Nazi Germany. Yeah. Of course he knew what he was talking about, right?
Absolutely.
But, and also, like you said, Tatum, it has a grain of truth in it, because actually eating fruits and vegetables, getting your 5 to 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day is good for you. There is good science for that.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, like with the sort of boom in cancer in the under 50s that we know is happening, and you don't quite know, nobody can say explicitly why, but particularly in colorectal cancer, saying it could be to do with modern diet, like that plants a seed, doesn't it? And then you're like, well, if diet is the problem and this is offering a dietary solution, like you can see why people make that jump when we're uncertain about things. Like grasping onto something that tells you this is an answer that you can rely on is really appealing.
Well, and it gives you a sense of control, which we all lose. And I myself have, I fully own up to when I finished treatment, and I was, I still worry about relapse, but when I was really worried, I had a lot of smoothies and went nuts. I went nuts for nuts and berries and all kinds of things, because it's the one thing that you can really control is what you put in your body. And it's just really, I guess, having an awareness that you can only control so much. And yes, you can eat healthily, but going down any kind of weird rabbit hole too much and paying people as well is rarely going to end well.
If I was coming up with like a little kind of top tips of things to look out for, with TikTok, it's like not only are they, sharing this video, sharing this information, but what are their links and what are their links? Are they making money? Does it cure everything? Is there a kind of a conspiracy theory behind it? And also thinking about, I made a reference to the Wild West, but social media is a Wild West. It isn't regulated the way that, that the Australian lady was regulated in Australia. Weirdly, though, Gerson, the charity in the UK, went undetected from like 1996 until 2018.
Yes, and they got shut down, right?
Yeah, in like 2019. Yeah. But they were going a really long time. So, decades, but they were, basically told, you don't have any evidence, there's no public good, you can't be a charity. But when we are out there on the frontiers, when we are in the Wild West, and to some degree, podcasts are a Wild West as well. Like, it just came up about Stephen Bartlett's podcast. That quite a few of the guests are talking about things that don't have evidence, and there's no regulation. If it was on television, there are regulations covering what you can explore and how you explore it and what caveats you use. But, podcasts haven't been around that long. TikTok hasn't been around that long. And even with regulations, they can take 30 years to catch up to a scammer. So it's really about kind of like, how do you protect yourself when you might be at your most vulnerable spot?
And just one other thing I would add is, if they say, look at this research, really, I think we did another podcast about this, Tatum, like really understanding the stats and the statistics and that kind of thing. But I found some quote unquote research on Gerson therapy, and I sent it to my husband, who's an epidemiologist. So he looks at this kind of stuff all day long. And he wrote back about 15 minutes later saying, "This is garbage." Those are his exact words. Obviously, I'm lucky that I have like a personal epidemiologist I can go to, but I think it's always worth checking, where has it been published? If you don't know what are good medical journals, you can always Google what are, the top 10 medical journals. Is it in that? Has it been subject to a randomized controlled trial, which is the kind of gold standard? Because the paper that I looked at was like, here's 5 people that did pretty well with melanoma after having Gerson therapy, and that means nothing.
But it actually didn't even include, did they have regular treatment as well?
No.
So
no.
It's again, like it doesn't have the parameters. The other thing is looking at the authors. So if you're in a journal and you click on an author, it will show you the other things that they've published.
Yes.
And a little bit like the Australian lady and Claire's like, this will cure everything. Many of them will have done other papers on completely completely random other projects, you know? It's like teenagers being extra rebellious around the age of 14. And you're like, what? Like, that's got nothing to do with oncology. It's got nothing to do. It's not even like barely related. But when you see that, you can go, okay, this is not their area of expertise.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, kind of like, okay, I can kind of park this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Absolutely.
journals are good. Again, they're kind of like a way to some degree that things have a bit of regulation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they can always ask us if you get really stuck, drop us a DM. We're always keen to look into scams more deeply. So if you think something looks like a scam, send it to us. We'll look into it for you.
So
Absolutely. I think that's the other tip is have a community of people around who you can bounce ideas off. It's the key one, isn't it? Like, avoid absolutes, check out the research, talk to other people before you make any decisions. Like, would be the top 3 for me, I think.
and Kynwyn, tell them how to find you.
So we are on our website. You can look at shinecancersupport.org. We're on Instagram at shinecancersupport. Yeah, we'd love to see anyone, whether you're interested in cancer scams or not. You're very welcome in our community, as long as you are not selling a Rife machine or Gorson therapy.
I am so looking forward to perhaps next year doing Cancer Scams and Scammers part 3. It's always a pleasure. Thank you to all of you listening. Yes, get in touch if you find the secret to life, how to live to 100, are unsure about this study or papers or treatment, you want a community, come find us. And thank you to my amazing guests, Claire and Kynwyn. Till next time, bye.
Bye.
Not Your Grandma's Cancer Show.